This is that season where feelings get hurt and truth gets told. Not soft landings, no PR polish, no let me say this the right way. This is receipts on the table, narratives challenged, not repeated. If it don't stand up to daylight, it don't deserve protection. If it's flimsy, we gonna fold it. If it's fake, we expose it. If it's lazy, we flame it. Because growth don't come from applause, it comes from pressure. They rather be right than see Coach Prime win. That's where we're at on this afternoon edition of Morning Wood. So look, if you're hoping Coach Prime would fail just so your old take could survive, this episode is about you. So let me do like I always do and say it slow for the people in the back. There's a whole sector of so-called fan-based media. They got Prime in the name or Buff in the name or this in the name that does not want Deion Sanders to succeed. Not because they love football, not because they care about the kids, not because they're protecting the sport. They want him to fail because they already took the position. And his success, would make them wrong. And some people would rather be right and miserable than wrong and honest. See, real fans adjust. Real analysts evolve. Real media says, oh, I missed that one. Let me update my thinking. But insecure media, oh, they double down. They root for locker room rumors, portal chaos, NIL confusion, every loss sounding the 5-alarm fire. Not because it's news, but because it feeds the narrative they're already married to. They ain't covering football, they're defending their ego. And let's talk about the double standard that exists because it's loud too. Every other coach out there gets, oh, it's year zero. Rebuilding takes time. You got to shift the culture. There's recruiting cycles. What does Coach Prime get? If he doesn't win immediately, it's a failure. He's too flashy. He's distracting. That's how it's supposed to be done. Hold on now. Football do got a rule book, but not a personality clause. What they're really saying is this: win, but don't change anything. Succeed, but don't disrupt us. That's fear dressed up as analysis. Here's what scares them to death. If Coach Prime succeeds doing it the Coach Prime way, then branding matters. Players gain leverage. Access isn't controlled by the same old gatekeepers. Development doesn't only belong to 5 college football zip codes. Charisma is no longer a crime. That changes who gets listened to. That changes who gets access. That changes who controls the conversation. And some of these folks built their entire platform on being the only voice in the room. But now the room got louder. And here's the nastiest part, so don't miss this, because the nasty is where it's at. When you root against Prime, you ain't really rooting against the coach. You're rooting against players who bet on themselves. You're rooting against kids maximizing their NIL. You're rooting against families getting an opportunity. You're rooting against a new pathway working. But let me keep it simple. Are you rooting for young men to win, or are you rooting for your old tweet to age well? Because both can't be true. Critique is fair. Losses deserve breakdowns. Mistakes should be discussed. But hoping for failure so you can say, I told you so, that ain't football, dog. That's insecurity with a Wi-Fi connection. The real ones say, I was wrong, and the sport is better for it. The frauds will say, oh, just wait, it'll still collapse. That tells me everything I need to know. Let me leave you with this. Anybody rooting against Coach Prime just so they can protect an old take was never about this football program in the first place. They scared of change. They're scared of being exposed. They're scared of losing relevance. And that's why, no matter what the scoreboard says, Prime already won. If this stepped on your toes, good. That means you felt it, and I'm talking about you. But speaking of coaches, before we get out of here, let me say this first. Mike Tomlin is one of the greatest coaches this league has ever seen. Period. Stop. Don't argue. We can argue with the facts. Never had a losing season. Walked into a locker room with Hall of Fame ghosts. Won a Super Bowl. Coached through chaos, tragedy, egos, transitions, and errors. That man led men. But here's where grown folks got to be honest. Sometimes greatness reaches a natural conclusion. Not because you're bad, not because you forgot football, but because the message don't hit the same no more. And in Pittsburgh with the Steelers, the message had gone stale. Same results, same ceiling, same playoff script, different quarterbacks, different coordinators, same ending. At some point, accountability isn't about blame, it's about resetting energy. Tomlin didn't fail Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh didn't fail Tomlin. They simply reached a point where familiarity started limiting evolution. And that happens to every great coach if they stay long enough. Belichick, Landry, Shula, Saban, even he knew when to exit. The wise ones step away before the legacy starts leaking oil. Now, let me be clear. If you think this diminishes Tomlin's legacy, you don't understand leadership. Because greatness isn't measured by how long you sit in the chair or cling to it. It's measured by what you built while you sat in it. And what Tomlin built was a culture, accountability, stability in a league that eats coaches alive. Now, we're going to talk about the stuff that folks whisper about, but don't give enough credit for. And I'm going to say it's the Rooney family. The Rooney family didn't just hire Mike Tomlin. They trusted him. They empowered him. They stood by him when outside noise tried to turn race into a talking point instead of results. Long before diversity became a PR slogan, the Rooney family was practicing it as principle. They didn't flinch. They didn't hover. They didn't undermine. They said, this is our coach, period. And that matters because representation without authority is just decoration. Tomlin had authority, and that's why his tenure means more than wins and losses. So yes, it was time. Time for new energy in Pittsburgh. Time for Tomlin to choose his next chapter instead of being pushed into one. Time for both sides to protect what they built before decline defined it. But make no mistake, when we talk about the greatest coaches of this generation, Mike Tomlin's name ain't a debate. It's a requirement. And wherever he goes next, or if he never coaches another down, his legacy is already stamped and Steelers gold with NFL permanent ink. That's how a grown man exit looks. That's coming from me, a Cowboy fan. Look, y'all know the rules. If you like it, subscribe, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. It is an afternoon edition of Morning Wood because sometimes wood don't pop up in the morning. It surprises you in the afternoon. We'll be back when it comes back. Morning Wood. We out.